Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, those will be moved to full board. So we'll go to James' report now.
Aye.
Good afternoon.
It was AI.
Training to be a ventriloquist, I guess.
I was very confused for a moment. Okay. Good afternoon, commissioners, member of the subcommittee, James Heath, Wayne County Corporation Counsel. And I'll allow Aaron and Carter to introduce themselves as well.
Aaron Wagner, Chief Administrative Officer.
Carter Fisher, Assistant Corporation Counsel.
I'll let Carter go through the general report update that you got concerning construction. But before we do that, I think just give you a little bit of our most recent conversations and updates regarding substantial completion and turnover and those things that we all have been discussing for a while. Last Tuesday to be exact, we sat down with Bedrock and we continue to be in conversations about how close the county is to substantial completion. As you recall from our prior conversations, the contract requires that work be completed, save punch list items, and that the facility is able to be used for its intended purpose. And that is how the county interprets substantial completion. We, at the end of April, the developer Bedrock sent us what they termed a construction update progress report, indicating how close they believe they were to substantial completion. The county responded with our position as to the work that needed to continue to be done with the facility. That was the end of April. Work has continued in earnest and they've continued to make progress in that regard. And so we had another update meeting, as I said, last Tuesday with them to allow them the opportunity to reiterate their position about how close they are. And we reiterated ours concerning the work that needs to be done. And through all of that, work continues on the facility, which is the most important thing, because every day that we have productive work on the project, we get closer to the county being able to receive it and ultimately have it turned over. And that would begin our 6-month time period. As you all know, I've sounded like a broken record in terms of turnover. So it is important to the county that when we do receive the facility, that it be ready for us to move in and do the things that our end users require. I have had conversations with our end users, the prosecutor, the chief of the Third Circuit Court, all of those who are going to, the sheriff's department, all of those who are going to be moving in, who have been participating in our punch list walks. And so what that is, when an area of the facility is near completion, we will review it with the end user who's going to ultimately occupy, and they will write down any problems they see. And we will record those things, turn those over to the developer and the general contractor, and they will work on those punch list items. Those are things that the contract contemplates. What we are referring to are larger items that are outside of that relatively minor, if you want to term punch list items as relatively minor. You all have heard those terms in general construction projects that you've been a part of, either residential or commercial. So that is where we are from our perspective. collectively as a county, and by that I mean the executive's office as well as our end users and I believe the commission as well. It's important that we adhere to the contract so that we have the ability to be successful in the all important transition phase. And so that is where we are as we stand today. Aaron, anything you'd like to add at all?
No, not at this time.
I wanted to ask a couple of questions about that, about the punch list. The committee hasn't seen the punch list, what you're referencing. And I just wondered, would like for the committee to get some type of an update instead of just the general term of punch lists. So we know when we're whittling that down, is it making progress rather than so we can actually see where where it's occurring? What are the ones that are maybe bigger issues, larger issues, and more costly and time consuming that are on that punch list too? If you could share that with us by the next meeting.
So if I can answer it, so recall the punch list are things that just have to be completed before the end of the project. And so it's not like punch list has to be complete. So punch list, literally, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items. A wall socket is not straight or something along those lines. Per the terms of the contract, after substantial completion, the county has to turn over the punch list items that we discover, and ROC will continue to work on those things. So what we have is really not even a formal punch list yet. We've just gotten a head start on that process, Commissioner. And so when we turn over what would be our formal punch list to Bedrock, that would be the appropriate time for that to be disseminated to the committee. To do so today would be to turn over a formal list to you that has not even been communicated to Bedrock formally.
So I guess a point I'm trying to make too is I think we'd like to know what are big items, or certainly not anything like light switch covers, but big items that could hold things up, and the progress that's being made on those, maybe on a monthly basis. Let us know what those are, how those are being resolved.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. And for those kind of more major issues, we can discuss a way to make the commission more aware of the things that are of concern. Because some of these issues are matters of dispute with Bedrock. I'd like to have that work that dispute out, not necessarily in the public with them, but I think you raised a good point, and there's probably a way for us to have those discussions in the most productive way.
Okay, all right. The other thing I wanted to, while I'm thinking about it, is I know there were some issues brought up in Carter's report that was about the environmental issues. There's still negotiations going on who's going to pay for those costs. And if you can give us an quick update on that, where that stands.
Sure. So ROC has presented us with a list of costs primarily related to parking lots at this point, which were sort of the last items to be completed where we were doing underground work. We just have some differences of opinion as to what constitutes an unbudgeted environmental cost per the agreement versus sort of cost that we knew about ahead of time or should have known about. So that we're still negotiating those things and sort of writing letters back and forth at this point. But we do look to hammer that out in the coming months.
And just so you're aware too, those issues are not the subject of delays or anything like that. That's for work that has already been done.
Okay.
And so when we are talking about those issues, we're just disputing and having a conversation about who's responsible for work that has already occurred. So that is not something that would impact scheduling one iota.
Okay. Last thing I have right now is it's been brought to my attention that the old building that used to be the waste to energy facility, the smokestacks are going to be coming down. Are we going to have somebody have they had communications with the contractor that's going to be taking those down? Because I understand it's going to take place this month, maybe even within the next week or so. And that they don't fall and damage anything that we've done there on the site.
Yeah, so we have had conversations that the city, that is not county property, as you're aware, has talked to us about that process, and we have our buildings people and contractors and everyone in touch with them to make sure that it is demolished in a way that does not do harm to any county interests in that regard. I think so. What you're asking about is a specific construction matter, and we feel that we're on top of that. I think you and I share in the thinking that this is a positive development for that area,
Right.
and we're happy to see progress there, and we have confidence in the professionals who are doing that demo that it will not have a negative impact on the county's interests.
Okay, just want to make sure everyone was aware of it. I've got a number of questions, or commissioners that have questions. Commissioner Marecki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was a little bit surprised to see the article in either the news or Free Press last week about missing the deadline date. I don't really remember you guys giving a specific deadline date.
So I'm not able to quote the article, quite frankly, due respect to where it appeared. You know, the structure, you all are aware of the structure of our project.
Right.
You know, we are going to be guided by construction progress on the ground, not, you know, dates which were set years and years ago pre-COVID and the like. There are outside completion dates which are in no way, at this point at least, we are in danger of missing, and those would be responsibilities that the developer and the contractor would bear. So where we are placing our focus right now is on making sure that the milestones with respect to substantial completion and turnover, as opposed to dates on calendars, are met, and that we're able to receive the facility in a usable way for us.
So are we getting closer to like an arbitration type thing, or are you still confident that?
So, you know, in order to achieve substantial completion, the developer Bedrock would need to provide the county with formal notification of such. And then per the terms of the development agreement, the county has a specific period of time to respond to that and to say, yes, we agree, no, we don't agree. And if we do not agree and we cannot come to a resolution, then we would go to a fast track arbitration. We are not at that point yet because we have not gotten a formal notification from Bedrock that they have achieved substantial completion. And so we have not responded formally saying, you know, yes, you have, or no, you have not.
Okay, so
And
they
so-
have to first initiate that. Okay.
Right. And
right.
so when I spoke with you, when we spoke back at the end of April about this, I believe it was the end of April, beginning of May, and I talked about that informal communication that Bedrock sent, that was what they termed to be a progress update, and saying, this is how close we think we are to substantial completion. And we responded. And what I can tell you in general terms, they believe themselves to be closer to substantial completion than the county has been willing to accept at this point. But those have not been formal notifications on their part. And so we are no closer to arbitration, to specifically answer your question today, than we would have been a year ago, because we don't have formal notifications between
Okay.
us.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Kinlock.
Yes, thank you. The substantial completion, which is a contracted notice that we have to get from Bedrock. And then the turnover date, those are the two contracted notifications or actions that have to be taken into consideration, as far as us taking custody of the facility.
Those aren't the only ones. Those are the first ones, though. So substantial completion per the terms of the development agreement would come before turnover. So you can't get to turnover
Absolutely.
until you get to substantial completion. And then, there's final completion. And there's those several markers in the development agreement.
So after we are giving substantial completion notice, how long do we have to comply? Do you respond or reply? I
I
mean,
believe it's 10 days. Am I correct?
so
10 days.
So 10 days to say whether or not we agree or disagree that we have, that the construction is substantially completed.
Correct.
Okay, so the moving date, I understand it's a moving date. I understand it's not firm and it was informal, but with regards to that progress update in their head, when did they, or what had that date passed, in which they suggested that they would possibly be substantially completing this project?
Well, I'll answer your question this way. At the end of April, they sent us a progress and they believe they were pretty close to or at substantial completion. And there's been considerable work since the end of April on the project. And so, listen, I don't want to suggest that we have not been working in partnership with this, because we have. And so at the same time, all of us have been talking about whether this threshold or that threshold has been met. Construction has continued,
Mhm.
right? And so what I can tell you is 5 weeks after we got that progress update, a lot of construction work has occurred and been completed. And it is still being worked on and is still being completed. And so, that's kind of the best way I can answer that.
Okay, so as we're winding and hopefully this winding things down, you mentioned the outstanding issues associated with the parking lot, that's a key issue. Like there's some issues surrounding the costs associated with the parking lot. And I think the cooperation is demonstrated by the punch list that you said that is ongoing, but you haven't shared that with them. So how are they gauging our concerns? How are they gauging our concerns as it relates to, no, we're not substantially completed? If we haven't provided them with a punch list or any, what type of communication are we letting them know that, no, we don't believe we're substantially completed or close to that, because this is what's outstanding if we haven't provided the punch list?
So let me say again, substantial completion means able to operate the facility for its intended purposes.
Okay.
With only punch list items remaining. And so ROC can achieve substantial completion even though there are punch list items remaining. The idea is that they will continue to touch up paint, fix a light socket.
So the punch list
Minor things.
is a punch list that we all are familiar with.
That's right.
So-
Those are things that you might walk through and see, you know what, we need to touch that up, or we need to do that. When we talk about what needs to happen for substantial completion to be achieved, for turnover to be achieved, we are talking about more substantive construction matters that the county is saying, we can't operate the facility for its intended purpose
So I'm
until
asking,
these sorts of things are completed. We have had, and I think this is answering your question, Commissioner, we have had very direct and pointed conversations with Bedrock concerning those items which need to be completed. And so there is, and they are things which are obvious to construction experts and contractors who are doing them. But we have had very open conversations with them. And so there is not a lack of knowledge going both ways between the county and CGL and Bedrock about those things that they need to achieve in order to have substantial completion.
What I'm asking is, what are those? You know what I'm saying? That the construction experts would be aware of that, that are still being determined that they need to be completed before we get to substantial completion, before we get to the turnover date. But the key thing is the cost associated with all of this, with all of the remaining items, punch list included, I suggest. So, I know we had talked a number of times about change orders. I don't believe that we've seen any change orders to have come, I guess come in recent months. But just wondering, substantial costs, additional costs, how is that looking? Are we associated with completing the project?
Yeah, so excellent question. When we talk about punch lists and when we talk about the things which need to be completed for substantial completion, those are things required under the contract.
Okay.
And so those are not things for which the county is saying, we're paying extra money for, right? We're saying the basis of design, which is the playbook, if you will, for what we are to receive, says that you need certain items. And we are saying you have to complete those items before substantial completion or turnover. That's separate from change order items because there are things, for instance, that we may have requests or may want above the basis of design and for which a change might be appropriate. There are things that end users bring to me, Commissioner, on a semi-regular basis to say, I know we didn't include this in the design, but I'd really like to add. And so we evaluate those things on whether they are absolutely required in order for them to operate in the way that they need to. And we respond to them appropriately. There will be some additional items that we do bring to the change order panel, and which works with the permission of the commission, that are for things outside of the established scope of what ROC needed to do. That is separate from what I am describing when I say punch lists
And so change orders, so we're to anticipate there will be some additional change orders that we should anticipate that. But substantial costs, we would say that we're still, available to handle it.
100%,
Okay,
100%. And you've approved, some of the things which are most important. So for instance, when we came to you and says we need additional money to purchase property for parking and the like, that's, that would perhaps not technically a change order, because that's not work that Bedrock was necessarily doing, but that's an expense that was outside of the scope of our development agreement with ROC, which was important for the project, which we presented and you approved.
One last point. Bedrock
We're
is
running out
covering
of
the cost
time.
overrun. Oh, yes. I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're running out of time.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Mr. Clementi,
I'm good.
you're good?
I'll get some.
Mr. Beto?
Yeah, very quickly. Keith, you mentioned that back at the end of April, they wanted to basically turn over the project to us, correct, with a substantial completion?
Yes, they had thoughts about their proximity to substantial completion.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, to me, a substantial completion means that this property is ready to be occupied. There's a certificate of occupancy to be issued. It's safe to occupy this place. There are no missing tiles in the bathroom or the vanities, and all of these are in place. What are some of the things that would deter the contractor from achieving substantial completion right now? I mean, are we talking about like exposed wiring, divided walls not being built? What are some of these items, the big items that could deter them from achieving substantial completion?
So when we talk about, for instance, missing tiles and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
those are the sorts of things that, one might believe would be punch list sort of items, sort of minor things. I think you were 100% correct, Commissioner, when you said you're ready to occupy the building and the building can be used
For that intended
as it is intended to be used. And so we are talking about more substantive issues. And I think the chair has given me a good assignment that I'll have to figure out a way to have communications with the commission about some of those larger issues, Commissioner, without there being a public back and forth with Bedrock. And so if you'll allow me to figure out a way to do that, I would appreciate it. Because I do want to make sure that our conversations continue to be as productive as possible with
Commissioner, is that okay? with you?
Yeah, I'm gonna yield my time.
Okay.
We'll have other discussion.
Commissioner Moretti.
Just a real quick, so for these larger problems that you're talking about, you also mentioned they're all in the contract. So is this a different interpretation of contract with Wayne County and Bedrock with some of these items? If they're all in the contract, how come they're not doing them?
So we're not talking about whether the work needs to be done. That's not what we're disputing.
Okay.
The dispute is relative to whether they can successfully declare substantial completion prior to these things being done. So for instance, if we're not, the dispute is that, no, we don't have to build that. The dispute is, well, we can declare substantial completion prior to that being finished.
Got it.
So that's more so the nature of the dispute as opposed to whether a thing needs to be done.
Got it. They want to move it along and you're saying not until these things are done.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I apologize to everyone, but we're going to have to move this along and so I'll go to our clerk for the next item on the agenda.
Such other matters?
Are there any such matters before us? We don't have anything in front of us. I haven't seen anything. Have you, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay.
None.
Next on the agenda.
Public comments. All lines have been asked to unmute themselves. No emails have been received.
Is there anyone present in the room that wishes to speak? All right. Seeing none.